Every night, the old dog howled at the same tree, and no one knew why. Turns out, his owner Brian Costner was living above a buried secret tied to his father's darkest legacy. When they unearthed a child's remains and a military handkerchief with the initials WK, the truth began to surface, and silence was no longer protection. But just wait until you see how this chilling mystery unraveled, and why, in the end, justice finally found its voice. In the quiet town of Maryville, Virginia, the kind of place where folks still wave from porches and lock their doors more out of habit than fear, something happened that folks now whisper about at gas pumps and after Sunday service. It all began with a dog. Tig was no ordinary mutt. He was an old pit bull with a clouded eye and a jaw like a rusted vise. A scarred survivor of something no one ever asked about, and no one had the nerve to guess. He belonged to Brian Costner, a retired Marine and widower whose home sat at the edge of town, just shy of the old ravine. Every night, exactly at 10:12, Tig would limp out into the yard, sit down in the dirt, and begin to howl. Not bark, not growl, howl, long, low, and chilling, like he'd seen something only he could understand, always at the same tree, a lone ash that grew on the back edge of the Costner property, an odd, crooked thing, almost skeletal in the moonlight. It stood like a marker, a boundary, or maybe a warning. At first, Brian thought little of it. Probably a raccoon, he muttered, or a fox, maybe a coyote. But night after night, the dog returned. Same place, same time, same mournful wail. Then the neighbors started to notice, started to complain. "He's waking up my baby," one said. "It's unnerving," another muttered. "It's like he knows something's there." And the more Brian tried to shoo Tig away, the more stubborn the dog became. He wouldn't eat after dusk, wouldn't look away from the tree, wouldn't sleep unless he was facing it. It was as if he'd taken it upon himself to guard something no one else could see. By the sixth night, Brian had had enough. He grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, shoved it into the crook of his arm, and called out to his son, Alex, a quiet, thoughtful 12-year-old who'd been unusually nervous ever since the howling began. He also waved over Haley, their next-door neighbor and part-time housekeeper, a college student with a sharp mind and a backbone tougher than most. The three of them trudged out under the stars, flashlights bobbing, grass wet with dew. Tig was already there, silent for once, crouched at the base of the tree, tail tucked, ears back, his whole body coiled like a spring. That's when things began to twist. The dog didn't bark, didn't growl. He just lay down, right in front of the tree, and whimpered. Brian narrowed his eyes, raised his light, and shined it up the trunk. The bark was rough, blistered with old weather, but there, scratched just above eye level, were 5 words: "You look, but you don't see." And that was when the air changed. The crickets stopped, the wind died, and something in Brian's gut told him. This wasn't a warning. It was a message left for someone who knew how to read it. And everything that came next started with that sentence carved into the wood. Brian and Haley came back with an axe, not out of panic, not yet, but with that quiet determination people get when they realize something needs to be faced, even if they don't fully understand what they're walking into. Alex didn't join them. He'd been distant since that night by the tree. He barely spoke at breakfast. He hadn't been sleeping, and when he did, he woke in cold sweats, eyes wide, breath shaky, whispering, "She's calling me. The girl at the window. She says she's cold." Brian checked the windows. Every one of them was locked, iron bars over the lower panes, no sign of a break-in. And yet, the next morning, Alex came to the kitchen pale as chalk, lifting his shirt to show 4 thin, red scratches across his chest. Delicate, precise, like fingers or claws. Brian didn't know what to think. Logic started slipping through his hands like sand. That same day, Haley took her search online. The local college kept digitized newspaper clippings, and she combed through them deep into the night. Then she found it. One short article buried in the archives. In the fall of 1989, 6-year-old Mary Ellen Rowe disappeared while playing near Lot 46. She was last seen by neighbors near a lone ash tree bordering the ravine behind the Costner property. Her body was never recovered. Haley stared at the screen. Lot 46. That was Brian's land. They returned to the tree just after sunset. The axe cut through roots like dry rope. Brian worked in silence, sweat on his brow despite the cool evening air. Haley cleared the earth with gloved hands, brushing away clumps of dirt until her fingers struck something smooth. Something wrapped in fabric. It was a child's bracelet. Plastic beads, faded with time, some cracked. It was wrapped tightly in what looked like a military-issue handkerchief, olive drab, monogrammed. WK. Haley turned to Brian, confusion blooming into fear. "K?" Brian's face lost all color. "That's my father's," he said slowly. "Walter Costner. He died in this house. We buried that with him." His voice caught. "I put it in his casket, myself." They said nothing for a long while. The woods around them held its breath, and then the ground gave way. Just a small collapse, a hollowed-out space beneath the roots. Brian reached Diornai and pulled up a slab of concrete, a square, heavy piece. Underneath it lay a bundle wrapped in cloth. He unfolded it, hands shaking. Inside was a scorched porcelain doll. Its face was melted on one side, the eye blackened. Lying beside it, a child's necklace. The tag on it read, "Mary, 1983. Brian staggered back, nearly dropping it. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." His mind flashed back, the punishments, the way his father used to keep the basement locked, the harsh discipline, the silence, the way the old man spoke of teaching hard lessons. At the time, it was just a father's tough love. But now, what if it wasn't? What if there was more? Haley stood frozen, her mouth slightly open. She wanted to speak, but couldn't. Finally, in a low voice, she said, "This isn't your fault, Brian, but people deserve to know. She deserves to be seen." Brian didn't answer. He just stared into the earth, his face carved in stone. His knuckles were white around the flashlight. The veins on his temple throbbed. And somewhere, behind all that silence, something in him cracked. And everything that followed began with that crack. The morning after the discovery, Brian called the police. 2 cruisers arrived just after dawn. No sirens, no rush. Only quiet, deliberate steps. They worked in silence beneath the tree. And when they finally lifted the small bundle of remains from the roots, the air grew still. That's when Tig, the dog who started it all, lay down beside the porch and didn't get back up. The vet came quickly. "Heart failure," she said softly, peaceful, like he let go. Haley stood back, arms wrapped around herself. He held on until someone listened. Forensics confirmed what they feared. The remains belonged to a young girl, no older than 7, likely buried sometime around 1989. The clues, a scorched doll, a beaded necklace, the military handkerchief marked WK, all pointed inward, toward the Costner name. But there was no proof, no charges, just silence. And in Meridell, silence spreads fast. Brian's windows were shattered twice. Neighbors crossed the street, and Alex, already shaken, stopped speaking altogether. 2 weeks passed. Then one evening, an elderly woman appeared on Brian's porch. Clara Briggs, former nurse. Shaking, barely standing, she said, "He showed me in the basement. He called it justice. I didn't believe him. I thought it was grief talking. But I saw her, Brian. I saw her." He didn't flinch, just placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Then it's time you speak." 3 months later, a small statue rose by the tree. A girl, arms at her side, eyes toward the sky. At the base, "Mary, forgive us. We looked, but we did not see." Alex began talking again, slowly. Brian started volunteering at the children's shelter. Haley published the story, and it reached far beyond Meridell. The tree still stands. It doesn't howl anymore, but no one dares get too close, just in case.